afternoon. We're glad to see you here for our cooking class in March. We decided that we are a quartet of nutrition experts. You can tell by the aprons that we're wearing tonight. So, this is your quartet of nutrition experts. I think I recognize a lot of you, and so you guys probably know who I am. I'm Rhonda. I'm one of the dietitians here. Jackie's also another dietitian here at the hospital. And we have Nellie with us, that is our dietetic intern, who's going to be helping with our cooking class. And of course, we can't leave out Jared as part of our quartet.
Hello.
Chef from down at Nutrition Service. So we're glad you decided to join us this evening. This is National Nutrition Month. I'm sure you guys had that marked on your calendar for years, correct? We as dietitians have. It started back in, I believe it was in 1980, or excuse me, it started in 1973. And I know some of you can remember that like I can. And it was actually National Nutrition Week. And then in 1980, they decided to observe it as a whole month. So it's National Nutrition Month in March. So some of the past themes have been enjoy the taste of eating right. Do you remember what year that was? I don't either. Bite into a healthy lifestyle. Last year was put your best fork forward. And then in the past it's also been get your plate in shape and eat right with color. So they come up with a theme every year for this month of National Nutrition Month. And so what do you think the theme is this year? Go further with food. Exactly. So going further with food, that's an emphasis on food waste with saving money and nutrients. Does that sound like your grandparents? Sounds like my grandparents. Maybe it sounds like some of you, right? Reducing food waste and saving money. So Jackie's going to share a little bit about the seeds that you have at your table as well.
Yeah, so first of all, raise your hand if you didn't get seeds. Did anyone not get seeds? Because I have some up here. So I can hand those out to you. And so I got these seeds from participating in a garden seminar. So I think a part about going further with food is going further with your ability to produce your own food. So if gardening is a hobby that you've taken up, now you have some seeds maybe to plant in your garden and to take food one step further. And so I hope that you find these seeds well.
So how many do a garden? Several gardeners here. Very good. Very good. So maybe we'll have a session in the future where we all bring a little bit of our produce in and share a show and tell. So anybody, I kind of want to back up and have a question for you. Last month we did the overnight oats. So who's tried the overnight oats with their berries? So what else did you find to go in with those oats? Other than what was maybe on the recipe? Pineapple. Fresh pineapple? Fresh pineapple? Strawberries. We didn't talk about strawberries. We did the blueberries. What else? I know what Jackie puts in hers.
Walnuts.
No. Peanut butter. She puts peanut butter in hers. And almonds.
And a PB powder.
And a peanut butter powder. Okay. Chocolate chips. That was in substitution for the walnuts, maybe? Anything else that you tried new and different in those overnight oats? Try it again? Are you going to be using those again? I think that works well. And it works well for me when I have done it the night before and I don't have to worry about anything that morning, but I still have, I think, a good nutritious breakfast to start out the day with. So going further with food, one of the things that is suggested is you buy only the amount of perishable food that can be eaten in a few days or maybe freeze it. That would be one way to go further with our food. We can also transform meals into soups, salads, sandwiches, by cutting up leftover meat and veggies. So that's some of the things we're going to be talking about tonight. Using items for salad toppers. Do you ever use any kind of your leftover things for on top of your salad? Can do some of that. What about for rice, on top of rice, or maybe on pasta? Some leftover items. Can you think of some of those that you might use? I also want to mention food safety. You know, we want to make sure that we do not have any foodborne illnesses. And there is a book, if you want to pick one up on your way out. It is specifically for, it says for diabetics, but you can kind of disregard that first page if you're not diabetic. That's the only page that says diabetes on. Everything else still applies to everybody else. And there's some good charts in there. You're welcome to take one of those with you if you like, and from USDA that they sent me a year or so ago. And it gives you those temperature ranges, the length of time you should keep items or maybe freeze them, so you can incorporate that. So you could also, you know, do some things like if you're not going to be using some things, maybe donate some of your food to a food pantry if it's going to expire and you don't have freezer space, something like that. So those are some things to maybe go further with your food. Your gardening, I think that's a great way to go further with your food. So we're going to first of all talk about the salad. So I think you'll be getting some of the salad that's, I think it's called the Sun-Kissed Health Salad. Did you find that on your recipes? So, the citrus dressing, it starts out with that olive oil as a base, and then uses lemon juice, orange juice. You could do fresh squeezed if you wanted to, but if you've got lemon juice like I have at home, just in the refrigerator, or you have orange juice in your refrigerator, then you could just use those as well. I'm sure the fresh squeezed would make it even better. Did we just use what we had, Jared? Did you squeeze oranges today?
No, we just used just canned, no sugar added orange juice.
Okay. So the other thing is parsley. If you buy parsley and it's getting to look kind of lumpy, it'll be good for this recipe because you put it in a blender and blend it up. So you've gotten parsley, it's been in your refrigerator a few days, it's not looking too attractive. So as it gets less attractive or lumpy looking, I think you can utilize it for this recipe. Avocados. Do you ever do like I do and buy avocados and then you don't get them used? They kind of get too soft, and so what do I do with it? Again, we use the avocado, part of the avocado in this, blending it up for the dressing. So if it's getting a little too soft, you might be able to use part of your avocado for this dressing. And you would be advised to use a non-metal knife. Did you talk about avocados?
Yep.
Okay. I'll let Jared talk about cutting and storing avocados later. And then I found that when I did this dressing recipe, it was a little thicker than I like dressing, and so I added a little bit more olive oil to it. I put a little bit more avocado in than I probably needed, and so then I backed up and added some more olive oil to it so it could be more drizzled on the salad. So as far as the actual lettuce that we use, the recipe originally called for Boston or Bibb lettuce, but any lettuces would work, any dark green leafy. We used romaine today. What are some others that you could use?
What was the question?
What are some other lettuces that you could use? This is romaine. The original recipe calls for Boston or Bibb lettuce. You may or may not be able to find that real easily.
Spring mix.
Any spring mix. You could use spinach. You could use kale. Any of those dark green leafy, some lettuces that you already have, or if any of you do lettuce in your garden, would be nothing wrong with using it in this recipe. So we're kind of going to get into some leftovers then. If you look down through the recipe, I think it calls for tomatoes, but then the quinoa. If you had some like quinoa and you had some left over, and you put it in the refrigerator overnight, you really could go in this as a cold item added to, and that again adds some nutrients that way. It adds that whole grain and helps increase the overall fiber content in this particular recipe. The other thing that we might use leftover is the edamame, the soybeans. So the recipe calls for doing those in frozen. So there's a couple of different ways that I found them actually. I found them frozen in the pods. You would boil them and then you would need to take them out of the pods. It's not advised that you actually eat the pods to the edamame. And then you can also find them where they've already done that for you. So this is the route I would probably go. So these do suggest that you do cook them according to the package directions, and that's just about boiling them in boiling water about 5 to 6 minutes. And then you would want them really to go in your salad. I think cold makes it better. So you got the cold quinoa, you got the cold edamame going on your salad as well. So what if you didn't have these at home? What can we use? Garbanzo beans. Garbanzo beans are chickpeas. So we could use some of those. I would suggest, you rinse them, but you're putting them in a salad, so you would want to rinse them and maybe even chill them a little bit. Or maybe you had some left over from something else and then you wanted to add them to your salad. What would we be adding to the salad when we use these? Protein. We'd be adding some protein. And we'd be adding some fiber as well. So what's something else that we might add to them if we didn't have either one of those? Another bean, maybe black beans, the cannellini, the white kidney beans. You could also use those. So any of those beans, and it's about, I think, what is it, a 1 cup of the beans that you would add to the product. So you don't necessarily have to use the beans that are on this original recipe. You could add some different ones that you have left over, making that food go further. So the other thing that you add is the rest of that avocado. We use a little bit of that avocado in the dressing. And so that's a healthy fat that has that monounsaturated fat. So we've added the rest of that avocado just in the salad. So has everybody had kind of a taste of it now? And it tastes pretty, yeah. I really like that dressing. I mean, I think that dressing would go on some other things. I think it would also, was not on this, but I think it would go well if you put black beans in this instead of the edamame.
How long would this salad dressing last? I didn't eat it on today, but
You could use it tomorrow. You would want to refrigerate it.
yes.
But so would this be maybe a keeper?
Yes.
Okay. So this is a way to, kind of stretch that salad, use some leftover beans, use that avocado that's getting a little bit too ripe. You could use then, the other thing we did, I forgot to add in there, we had those pumpkin seeds we added, right? Have you had those before? I think they're back there actually. So if you didn't like those, or you wanted to add something different in terms of the seed, you could also do that as well. So we're adding fiber. Whenever we do that, we're adding healthy fats when we do that as well. So this would be one way to kind of go further with your food, to stretch it, to do a salad. You said that at the beginning, we're going to do salads, we're going to do soups, to maybe stretch that food to go further. Help your budget, hopefully. Okay, so the next recipe, Nellie's going to do that one. And she's going to give you some insight to that. Oh, you think I can have colors first?
Yeah, we can. Okay, absolutely. Yeah. Does anyone here not utilize avocados on a regular basis or at all? They're really actually quite easy to handle and to deal with, to cut. I've got a few of them here that are done already. This one I haven't. The darker in color that they get, it's usually whenever they start getting more ripe, right? So if you're not going to eat them right away, you'll want to buy them when they're still fairly green. If you need them tonight, you're going to want them closer to that nice, deep, dark purple color of the outside of the flesh, right? Of course, there's a top side here. You're just going to get a paring knife, cut straight down, you'll get the pit, and then you'll just roll the knife and the avocado on the table, trying to keep it as straight as possible so that whenever you go to twist it out, you have an even cut. And then basically you're just going to poke a little bit into that pit, pop it right out, and it's ready to go. As far as getting the avocado out of the skin, there's lots of different ways of doing it. The way that I've found to be the easiest is if it's something like a salad that you're going to go on, just get a paring knife, if you trust yourself with a knife, and basically just score it down to the skin. That skin is really, really pretty tough. It's easy to go through, but it's not like super easy to go through, right? So if you're being cautious, you're not going to put that knife in your hand. And I just score it all the way across. And then if you can find a spoon that is pretty flat, right? You don't want something that's real concaved. You want something that's a little bit like the shape of the avocado, right? And then you just find an area, usually right where you put the knife in the side of the pit to pop it out. You'll push on that skin and it'll pop it loose from the rest of the avocado. And that's if you're like me and you want to make sure that all of those pieces that you're cutting out to be utilized on your salad still look pretty. Doesn't matter, but you know, if you're weird like me, you want to make sure it looks good. So, and then you're just basically going to work all the way around the avocado with your spoon, right? And then whenever you get back here to the very back, you can just start working that spoon in there, and you'll get everything out. You'll have the skin fold on you some, and you'll end up with the outside edges of it that isn't together. It's more kind of mush. That can happen from bruising, from shipment, or from the picking process. It's not unusual at all. You can also get it out of there whole if you don't want to cut it in. You want to cut it whole, and you can take it all out that way as well. Very quick. Once you get good at it, it'll be really, really fast, really easy, and you'll no longer be fearful of how in the world am I going to get the fruit or the meat of this avocado out of that skin. After you do about 30 of them in the course of a day, it becomes very easy. But just the way I always tell people is, if it's going to be for guacamole, you can get the softest one you want. It's actually going to be easier to make that up the softer that avocado is. If you're wanting it to maybe slice it up really thin to put it on a omelet, you're going to want it on that little bit firmer side because you want the heat to soften it, right? Because it will get to a point where it gets like too soft, and it's not really enjoyable in something hot like on a sandwich or or on top of a omelet or something like that. So just judge it off of what you're going to be having on how ripe you want your avocados and how firm you want them to be. And the outside skin, like I said, is very thick, very coarse. But once you get used to kind of knowing what it's going to feel like, and then translate that to what the product looks like once you cut into it and get into it, it'll be very easy for you to pick up an avocado at the store, know exactly what you're going to be using it for, and then be successful at getting it out of that skin, getting the pit gone, and then moving on into the cooking process.
I'm gonna be demonstrating a Mediterranean polenta cup for you guys, or at least talking about it. Are any of you guys familiar with polenta? Have anything of you had it? For my personal experience, my family is from Europe, so I grew up on eating polenta like at least once or at least twice a week, my whole entire life. So it's just something we've always had around, and back in Europe where my parents grew up, that was like the main grain that they had. I was talking to my dad, and he said that there was just no wheat to buy, and if they didn't have a place to harvest it and grind it. They just had a corn mill in town, and that's just what they used. Because of that, background, I was able to, be very familiar with polenta. And today, we found a recipe that we can demonstrate what polenta looks like if someone hasn't had it. And with polenta, you can store it even after you eat it. It refrigerates really well. So, and another thing we did as growing up, whenever we didn't eat, my parents would roll up that polenta and add some, protein and vegetables, make snowballs out of it. And, it was an encouragement for the kids to eat something. So it's definitely something to, try if you have somebody who's not really eating anything. So for the recipe, it asks for water. So if you've never made it, you boil some water, you bring it to a boil, and the recipe says 3 cups, and you add 1 cup of polenta. And if, for those who don't know what polenta is, it's actually corn. So it is considered a starchy vegetable, so you would consider it, for those who are diabetic, make sure they know that that is one of the carbohydrates. It comes in different forms because you can get it in a more finer form, which is more of a flour. And the way we use it here in the polenta is more of a coarse, so you just kind of let it boil. Once it mixes with the water, it just kind of forms into this structure where you can kind of mold and just kind of work with that. Then again, it has many benefits. It has some proteins, some fibers, some vitamin A. It's low in fat, lower in calories, so it's definitely a better option for those who want to just try something new. And as they mentioned, we go further with food, just trying something new. So that's also something I wanted to mention. And it is gluten-free, so for those who are needing another option for gluten-free, this is a great recipe to try. This recipe in particular is different than I've ever made. I've never tried it, but I did make it at home just to see how it turns out. We usually just boil it in water and just have it with many dishes, and it goes really well with fish, even with chicken, beef. We even have it in the morning sometimes if we have leftovers with some eggs. So it's a different type of dish. So to make the cornmeal, to make the polenta, you take the cornmeal with water, you boil it. As you let that, you stir it. Make sure you stir it because otherwise it gets stuck to the bottom of the pan. The recipe actually says to let it, stir it for about 5 minutes. Since I have so much experience with it, people like it at different forms and different textures. If you let it boil only for 5 minutes or let it cook for 5 minutes, you might feel like it's more of a gritty taste to where I like it more fine. So I actually cooked mine for about 20 to 30 minutes and just keep stirring, put it at low heat, and I burnt many, so I definitely know what it's like to not work with that high heat and burning. So for this particular recipe, I cooked it for about 20 to 30 minutes, and then on the side I took some pecans, which again are have that saturated fatty acids, the good fats that are good for your heart. They have some fibers, some vitamin A, vitamin E, so definitely antioxidants that your body needs. So let me back up. So with the cornmeal, you have what we're adding to this cornmeal is a pesto, and that's where, to make the pesto, you add the nuts, your garlic, your basil, and some oil. And again, what it really does, it just adds flavor to that cornmeal. So you're going to take the pecans, the basil, the olive oil, and the garlic, and mix it into that blender, pulse it until it's really fine. And then once you have that made, you just kind of divide it in half, mix half of that with your cornmeal, and then you let it chill. I particularly like it just warm, so you have it either way. But if you do want it cold, you could chill it, and then once you pull it out, you could spread the rest of that pesto over that garlic, and then over the cornmeal. And then once that's done, you can garnish it with anything you want. This particular recipe asks for those Karamata olives and the red peppers. And then you put it in the oven under broil, and then once it just kind of cooks it down a little bit, and then it's ready to eat. Again, this is, adding the pesto on there with the basil and the garlic. It adds so much the basil in particular has some vitamin K, some vitamin A, iron. The olive oil is one of those monounsaturated fats that's definitely adding some healthy fats for your heart health. And then garlic in general is, if anybody doesn't know, it's one of those anti-inflammatory properties. It helps fight infections. It has some vitamins as well, vitamin E, vitamin C, magnesium. So it's definitely adding a lot of nutrients to this polenta and flavor with the garlic, with the basil, especially that fresh basil if you buy from the farmer's market. You can definitely add it in even if it's a few days old. You know, it just helps give that flavor. And with the vegetables that you can garnish it, like I said, this particular recipe asks for peppers and olives, but some people might not like olives, so you can add, you know, I like to load my polenta with vegetables, so anybody can do it the way they like it. You know, if you had any other particular favorite vegetables, this particular recipe actually asks to put it in cups, in those like tin muffin cups. I did it, but I felt like everything was kind of falling off. This cornmeal is in a way where you can actually just blend everything in, so if you find it easier to put it in a sheet pan and just kind of stick it on in the oven, it's easier to cut. And so it depends on your family and what you want to do. But I particularly like the way it tastes. I don't know if you guys have enjoyed it. It's definitely different. It has more of a Greek flavor to it. So definitely something I haven't tried, but it's something new that I will probably be making from now on. So, any questions?
I have one.
Yeah.
Was this a full-size serving, or is this just a sample? I'm diabetic, so I
think it
need
was
to
a
know.
sample. Would it be
It's a sample serving.
Would it be a sample?
Yeah.
The serving size, I think, is 2 of them in a regular muffin tin size.
And I used an actual miniature muffin pan. On the polenta, it's about a tablespoon and a half
Okay.
of the mixture of polenta, like it is there with the pesto and everything. So one of those was about a tablespoon and a half
Okay.
of the polenta. So it's about a quarter of a serving, basically. Yeah.
And I in particular didn't have fresh basil at home, but I used what I had, so I just used some of the dry stuff. So again, because we are going further with food, we're trying to incorporate things that we do have at home, just kind of using up some of those extra, you know, grains that we haven't used in a while. So I think it's a healthy alternative for something if you want to try something new. Yeah.
As far as the recipe goes with the preparation, if you look at the basil that I've got here, you'll notice that there's some that is wilting out pretty bad. Kind of gets that darker coloration to it, right? It's not as green and vibrant as this basil is. And you're going to get that a lot at times, especially if you buy it in the store. And that's with any type of fresh herbs that you buy in the store. You're going to have this happen. And what happens, if it looks like this isn't a rotting process, right? And the way you can tell that is by looking at the structure of the leaf itself. It's going to get areas of it that are going to be way worse than others, but whenever it's uniform like that, it's usually a good indicator that it got too cold. It got to a point where it was almost at a freezing point, and basically when water freezes, it freezes into cubes, molecules, and so whenever that thaws, it releases back out in that nice liquidy, watery state, and that is usually, it breaks down all those membranes inside the cells that keep it uniform and keep it looking the same. You'll see that with cucumbers. If cucumbers get too cold, they'll almost look translucent, right? And that goes with a lot of your vegetables. So there's always an easy way of telling whether the produce is bad or if it's starting to wilt, like they were talking about the parsley earlier. When you pick that parsley up and it, you know, this is still pretty good. You've got a few leaves here that are kind of wilted. They're just not very happy, right? There's nothing wrong with using that. Do you want to use that on a sandwich in 3 days? Probably not. It's not going to look that pretty. But what the purpose of this type of class is to say, Okay, no, you're not going to want to put that on a sandwich for a bunch of company you're having over, but I can use that for other things. There's no reason why I can't throw that in the blender and still utilize that. And that goes with the stems, the stalks, everything. I wouldn't recommend using a lot, the more coarser part of the stalk, but as far as this whole, absolutely. There's absolutely nothing wrong. Do you want to put that on a sandwich? Probably not. You'll want to remove most of that stem. Whenever you get into the main stalk, that's when you start getting a lot more fibrous, and that doesn't cook down very well. It doesn't blend out very well. So it's the texture of your pesto is going to be drastically different. And so just look for areas that you can do. Pesto, when it's done with like fresh items, your fresh basil. Some people put dill and oregano and different things like that and make all kinds of different crazy pestos. It doesn't matter, they're all pestos, they're just different flavors. They freeze really, really well. It's just nuts, cheese, usually Parmesan cheese or Romano cheese people put in it. Your basil, your oil, you bag it up, put it in your freezer, and then you can just take little pieces of it out at a time, whatever you need to use it for. And as long as you're doing that, that's going to make all of that go so much further, because now you're taking something that you were only going to be able to utilize for maybe 1 to 2 meals, and you're stretching it to be able to use for several. So,
Ice cube tray works well too.
very well, yes. Freeze it in an ice cube tray.
All right. Let's talk about tacos. You want to go on? I was thinking about it the whole time I was sitting there. Well, I don't know about you, but when I think about leftovers, my go-to is often tacos. Is anyone with me, or am I kind of alone on that one? I think tacos are a great way to incorporate a lot of foods and then incorporate a lot of nutrients with it. So here we're making a turkey taco bowl, and you're going to walk away with one recipe and have ideas for about 3 more based off of some other options that we can do with this one. So, and just breaking it down, if we're going further with food, we're also thinking about, what kind of leftovers we have to incorporate in our foods. And then also further means, further in your day with what you eat. So we're eating things that allow us to have more energy, to more focus. So we're fueling our bodies with these nutrients that literally allow us to go further. And I think this is a great example of what that recipe might be. So you're getting your fiber, your protein, your healthy fats, and then a lot of flavor. So if you're looking at that spice mix there, you can really alternate, whatever flavor preference you have with it. Personally, I don't really like cumin, so I'd probably add less, and I'd add garlic powder because I love garlic. So using these types of herbs and spices, you're reducing the sodium. So if you're watching your sodium, these are all sodium free, so you can incorporate those. This does use sea salt, so personally I will, if I know I'm going to add cheese or some sort of dairy product, I might not add in salt because I know I'm going to get that saltiness from that dairy product. So I might give or take that sea salt. So this recipe here is using a slow cooker. So you'd probably want to know in advance that you were going to make this, because it takes about 5 hours to sit in this crock pot. So it's a really simple, easy, no fuss family meal. So if you're wanting to prepare, this gives you 7 servings. So you could feed 7 people with this, with planning in advance. And so you can make this either vegetarian, or you could incorporate the meat. So with that meat, we're using turkey with this. So maybe you had a turkey breast that you thawed from the freezer, or maybe you have turkey, or maybe you have chicken or pork or beef in your fridge that's about to go bad, or that you just want to use up. So you could definitely use that in this recipe. So this one uses that turkey breast, and you're putting that in the crock pot, and then you're adding canned vegetables in as well. So I always have canned vegetables on hand. I think it's a good thing to have on hand because you can really supplement a lot of foods with it. So you're talking about corn, diced tomatoes, black beans. You can go and get those on sale. That's what I'd encourage you to do, is look for sales and kind of stock up on them. Look for the no salt added varieties, and if that doesn't exist, do the low sodium varieties. Always rinse them off and get whatever is in that syrupy, watery, I don't know what you call that, but just to rinse that off, and you actually remove an additional 50% of salt on there. So it's good to rinse that off. If you even had fresh tomatoes or fresh corn or dried beans and you had cooked those up, you know, just whatever you have in your fridge. So you don't necessarily have to add corn in here if you don't like corn, but just you're supplementing more fiber and more protein with adding those beans in there and the corn. You could make it vegetarian by omitting that meat, and maybe you add a second bean like a chickpea. So you could do a meatless option. We talked about meatless Mondays before, meatless days in your week. So this could be a meal that you do that with. This uses also brown rice. So you could do Spanish rice if you didn't have brown rice, or maybe you had white rice. But the reason brown rice is on there is because it has more fiber in it. So those nutrients like fiber, like protein, those healthy fats that we'll get into, those are what make you go further in your day. So with the taco toppings, now you could top this with Fritos or sour cream, but those aren't very nutrient dense. So for the purpose of go further with food, we want to choose those foods that give you more nutrients. So that might be like fresh tomatoes, maybe it's even canned tomatoes maybe it's tomatoes from your garden or the farmer's market. And the avocado, like Jared's been talking about, you know how to cook it or cut it up now, so you can add that on top for some healthy fats. You could add that shredded cheese. If you're watching your calories, you might want to use less shredded cheese, but it's still a good fat and it adds a lot of flavor. That Greek yogurt, we're substituting that for the sour cream, and by doing that, we're cutting back on fat, we're adding more protein, and you're even treating your tummy with some probiotics. So that Greek yogurt is, I think, a perfect substitute for sour cream. So that gives you one idea. So you can do the slow cooker. If you didn't really want to spend any time in the kitchen, you know, started it early, that would be a really good meal. You could also prepare this with bell peppers. So if you were to take a whole bell pepper and cut off the top of it and then stick in these toppings, so you would mix them all together and then stick them in, top it with cheese and broil that in the oven and just allow that to kind of heat up, the cheese to kind of get all brown and bubbly, and then you can eat that, and that would be a great meal. And again, you could make that meatless, or you could include the meat in there. So you could do the bell peppers, you could do the slow cooker, or that third option is to make enchiladas. So you could go out and you could get, you know, maybe the recommendation would be a whole wheat flour, whole grain flour for that fiber. And you could then roll that up into that flour tortilla, and then, you know, maybe you're adding the enchilada sauce. The enchilada sauce just adds more sodium, so that's the nutrient that it kind of changes when you do use that enchilada sauce if you're gonna make enchiladas. But other than that, that's a great third idea for this recipe, and then you would just put that in the oven until that's done. So have you had the opportunity to take a taste of this? Is it something that you guys eat at home, have tried at home? Do we like it? Okay, very good, very good.
Don't need any chips with you?
We might have some Greek yogurt.
This is a chip-free session.
There you go.
So any questions about this diet, or this diet? I say that all day. How about this meal?
I was just going to say this looks like a good, the new electric pressure canner.
Oh, the pressure cooker?
Yeah, this would be a good recipe.
I have not cooked with that, so I'm unfamiliar, but Rhonda has one. She can probably agree or with
I
that.
think it would, that, you know, you could cook chicken or that turkey breast
Right,
really
and it's all
quickly.
done and fast, and you cook your rice
So
and
it-
everything.
It would just cut your cooking time down, but if you had the time to do it, you know, that 3 to 5 hours or 4 hours, then it would be fine as well.
And this cuts down, an electric pressure cooker, probably cut it down to about 20 minutes.
It's a really budget-friendly meal too. So if you don't put the meat on here, The rest is just like, it's just rice and canned vegetables. That's a pretty inexpensive meal. So you can feed a lot of people a very nutrient-dense meal for not very much. So, good ideas for sure.
You know, something to add to this, actually a combination between the last two recipes is a lot of times we'll buy something like the polenta and we'll use part of it for a recipe, and then we may not use that for quite some time again. But what we can do is you can make up all of it, take out part of it to add the pesto to make this dish, make up the rest of it as just plain polenta, roll it out to where it's about a 9x13 size, about yay thick, put it in the freezer and freeze it, and then a few weeks later you make this dish, and then you've got an event 2 or 3 days from now, going over to a friend's house or a potluck at church, and then you can turn the turkey taco dish and the polenta and make a Mexican casserole. Use the polenta in layers. Whenever I was in Costa Rica, that was actually where I had first tried it, and that's what they had used it for. They would make like a certain dish, like a casserole, and that would be the top instead of like a pie top or biscuits on top of like chicken pot pie. It was the polenta, and it was way easier to eat than using like a pie crust or puff pastry over the top of it, and it just went with it so well. So utilize that kind of stuff, and that I feel like a lot of what this month is not only representing making sure that we're getting as much out of our food as we can nutritionally, but also, and I forget the figures, and I wish I would have looked it up, but it's unreal the amount of perfectly good food that we throw away, even in our homes. I mean, restaurants and things like that is a ton, but even our homes, the amount of food that we waste and throw away is just astronomical. And all it would take is just a little bit of preparing and a little bit of time, and we would be able to utilize a lot of these things that we end up throwing away, or they end up sitting in our cabinet for 8-10 months, and we think, okay, I don't know if this is still good anymore. I'm not going to chance it. I'm going to throw it away. You know, we have all kinds of things in our cabinets that we make it one time and we don't make it again, and then it ends up going bad.
And with all you who garden, how many of you compost? So I mean, composting, you could feed your garden with the food waste that you have and really kind of save the planet in that way. You cut back on food waste and go further with those foods by giving back to yourself in a way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So the spotlight's on Jared now.
The
This soup.
last is the vegetable scrap lentil soup. Doesn't that sound lovely? So, a couple weeks ago, Rhonda had approached me and said, hey, we're looking for recipes for the next cooking class. Do you think we've got a few of them ready to go? Can you look and see if you can find some? So, I knew they had looked at getting the most out of your foods nutritionally, and I thought, I'm going to look and see what I can find on just really using every bit of the food that we buy in some sort of way. So I ended up finding this recipe book online. It was on a PDF, and it was like 55 recipes, fruits, vegetables, meats, and basically what it is using absolutely everything. A good description of that would be one of the recipes that I found, which was a coleslaw that was made out of broccoli and cauliflower stalks. So you put your food processor on and you shred the broccoli and cauliflower stalks with your food processor and then make your coleslaw. It breaks down just like cabbage does. Yeah, it's going to give it a different flavor, but now you're taking what most of us just throw away as garbage, and you're making a whole nother dish with that broccoli. So I got to thinking about it as we were making this soup. How many people, when you buy carrots like this at the store, you skin the carrot, throw those away? Why? Like I got to thinking about it, and I'm like, so why do we throw that away? Is there something wrong with it? And like I ate a piece of it raw, and it's like it has a different texture than the rest of the than the rest of the carrot. And you'll be able to see that. If you kind of pick through the soup, you'll be able to see the little pieces of the shreds of the carrot that's in the recipe. There is whole carrot chopped and then the shred of the carrot as well, or the skin or the husk or whatever you want to call it. And it does have a slight different texture. Like when you bite into it, it has a little bit more meat to it on that outside edge, you know. But as far as utilizing it in a soup or a stew or something, or a casserole, I don't really think anybody would notice. And so I got thinking about other things, like the leaves on celery. How many people take a celery stalk and cut the end of it off, cut the top of it off, and then cut all the leaves and everything off of it? Now, if you're using that for you know, a tray of fresh vegetables, I could see why you would cut the leaves off and everything like that. They've kind of got that bitter taste to them a little bit. But there's recipes all over the world where people are using the leaves, celery leaves, and they're using the celery roots, the ends of the stalk, washing those things up and utilizing them because they're absolutely usable. Exactly, yeah. I mean, all of that stuff is great to throw into a...
What about asparagus, the white ends of asparagus? Did you find any of that?
I did. There was actually a recipe in that book
Was there?
for using the ends. It was a asparagus soup. It was a cream of asparagus soup, and it was using those ends. But what you did is you boiled those ends in water for, gosh, I wanted to say it was like 2.5, 3 hours or something. It was a long period of time. And you just continually add water to it during that time and let it boil out and put it in. And then, because all you're doing then is you're taking all the nutrients and flavors out of those stalks. And then your water is evaporating. You're adding water back to it to draw more out. And then basically you strain the water and get rid of those unusable parts of the asparagus because they're unedible. I mean, they are. But there's still ways of using them. There was bruised apple chips, you know, and it was really just looking at the things that we generally throw away and finding ways of using them, making apple butter out of apples that were bruised up and different things like that. I mean, you think about that and it's like, well, that makes a lot of sense because you're cooking it anyway. So it's not really going to make any difference whatsoever. So really with this recipe, the garlic cloves, I did a little bit of translating on the recipe that I made. When it calls for 3 wilted celery stalks minced, I equaled that to be 1 cup. So the nutrient analysis that you guys are looking at is with these amounts on those. And this is just basically an estimated. Obviously, every stalk of celery is different. So this is a rough average. 3 stalks of celery minced is equal to about a cup. Carrot peels, tops. I also did a cup of that. And that was also with the diced carrots. So I peeled them, diced up the peels, and then used the rest of the carrot as well. In the recipe, I think the purpose was to just use the ends and the peels. But obviously I didn't want those to go to waste, so we put it all in there. The green beans, again, a cup roughly on those. Let's see, we use spinach, but you could use kale, you could use any leafy green. Spring mix. You would want to use something that has a little bit of substance to it, right? The spinach, the kale, those are your dark greens that has a little bit of meat to it so that you can cook it and it doesn't just absolutely disintegrate, right? If you put romaine lettuce in there, more than likely you're not even going to know it's in there after it's cooked. It's just going to be gone, right?
I went to Walmart the other day and they have already cut up like collard greens and kale for you to add into pasta dishes, soups. So that would be a good way if you just wanted to supplement your soups. Like Jared was saying, those are really great to add into those kinds of recipes. And you don't have to do any of the cutting. It's just literally all chopped up for you.
Nice. Good.
Talk about lazy.
The lentils, anytime I cook lentils, I prepare the dish to cook for an extended period of time. Because I've always been told that if you want lentils to be good, you need to cook them, and you need to cook them for a long time. The longer you cook the lentils, obviously they'll get nice and soft, but they'll also start absorbing all of the flavors from the rest of the stock and the vegetables and everything else in there. So that's going to help. That's going to help them be a little bit more edible. I've tried lentils just cooked and regular, and I didn't think they were all that great. I just didn't. They kind of reminded me of lima beans. But the longer that you cook those, they're going to get nice and soft, and they're going to really absorb up a lot of the flavor profile from the rest of the items that are in the soup. We did not use smoked paprika. We used regular paprika in this, just so you know that. Smoked paprika is actually really expensive. And I didn't have access to that.
You didn't talk me into buying it for him.
I did. I did. It is very good. Yeah.
So
It definitely has a place.
the other thing is the recipe says red lentils. I don't think there's any red lentils in Bolivar. I didn't find them today. So these are green lentils. So if you do find red ones, I'm sure they would work fine, but the green, how do the green ones taste? How was this recipe? Good? Yes, ma'am.
Could you explain the difference between the cumin and the coriander? What's powdered and what?
Yes. Coriander, if I remember right, is cilantro seeds that are ground. And then cumin is, I can't remember.
I thought it was powdered coriander. I thought cumin was powdered coriander, but I
Guess I have to come back next month so we give you the real answer. This is the question we'll have to work on for us.
Well,
So while Jared's looking at that, we'll go ahead and draw for the door prizes. We do have door prizes that go further with food. Have a question?
How do you ripen an avocado?
Kind of leave it out at room temperature.
You can put it in a brown bag. So if you went to the store, sometimes I'll go to the store and they're literally all hard. And I'm like, okay, well I wanted to use it tonight, but I guess I'll have to brown it on my counter. And you can put it in a brown bag and let it sit for a few days until it gets to that firmness that you've desired. So, good questions.
cumin is an actual plant. It's in the parsley family, and the ground cumin that you're eating is the seeds being ground, as far as I can tell. So cumin is a plant all of itself, and then coriander is the ground seeds of the cilantro plant. Yeah. So they're two totally different things. Yes.
So I guess you don't have to come back next month. Yes, we do want you to come back next month. Next month, our topic it'll be on April the 9th, and it's fresh fish finds. And we have a
3 times fast.
Say it 3 times fast. And we have a fisherman in our group that's going to be looking for it. Jackie knows him. So we'll be doing that one on April the 9th. The registration for that will open at 7:30 a.m. in the morning. So if you're with email with us, then you should be able to go online and register after 7:30 a.m. on Tuesday. Don't forget to fill out your evaluations. We do look at those things that you write on there, or we count up all the yays and nays. So we fill those out for us. And we'll look forward to seeing you in April.
Last question.
Yes.
Not a question, but I'm going to tell you, your scrap soup, if you take your scraps when you're cleaning this up, you can put them in a bag in the freezer, do you get enough that they can make them?
Absolutely. Yep.
Got a head
She
start
said
on
if
soup.
you get all your scraps and stuff together, throw them in a bag, put it in the freezer, and then just keep adding to it. And whenever you get enough of those scraps, then you make the soup up. So and that works great. And And that'll help in your chopping process because it'll be much easier.
Thanks for coming, and we'll hope to
Thank
see you
you.
next month.